Lesson 32, technological change. Now basically, as we move on in society, there's going to be more and more technological change. Matt Ridley, who's written a book, who writes in the Times, has written a book called The Rational Optimist. He always says that this change is going to be faster and faster and faster and faster. And the reason why it is because we have all this knowledge built up from previous centuries. And eventually, man is going to adopt all of that knowledge together and synergize it, and because of globalization we're all going to be working together so we can get quite remarkable change, which is why we don't need to worry about anything, because what's going to happen is we will just innovate our way out of any problem that comes along. I'm not so sure, okay, but that's what he says. Technological change is actually pretty remarkable, because what it can do is it can firstly lower the cost of production, so the long run average cost curve falls from there to there. And this will increase productive efficiency because we lower the average total cost curve. Secondly, it can also change the minimum efficient size of a business. On this one, the minimum efficient size business is getting bigger, maybe because a new technology has to be really, really big for them to adopt that new technology. Remember, the long run is always a definition of that you can change the scale of your firm. You can make it a different sort of size. But the minimum efficient scale is pretty more relevant today. It's where the long run average total cost curve moves to the left. So therefore, firms used to have to be this size to achieve the MES. Now they need to be this size to achieve the MES. Now the best example of that is clearly retailing. The high street has taken a massive hit because if you work on the internet, your costs go right down. If your costs go right down, it's much easier to compete with everybody else. So this has been the biggest change for new businesses. Right, so in this case, we're going to get a rise in productive efficiency. Will we get a rise in allocative efficiency? Maybe, maybe not. It depends whether or not the firm reduces its prices as well. If firms do in fact reduce their prices, like Amazon, when you buy books of Amazon, I think often they tend to be cheaper. If you buy books on Kindle, they are significantly cheaper. Therefore, there's a rise in consumer surplus, and therefore there's going to be a rise in allocative efficiency. Okay, now the big question is technology changes the structure of markets. And just to give you a little bit of history here, Schumpter gives the example when talking about creative destruction about how transport has changed. In the 18th century, we used to transport everything via canal. That was how the UK industrialised during that period of time. We went from the canal and then we went to the railway system, and everyone thought the railways were fantastic, and that's what we used. And then eventually we started to use road and trucks, and that became the cheapest form of transporting, and obviously get it direct to the door, whereas the railway system couldn't. So creative destruction is taking place all of the time. He also comes up with some other very important point, is when you have a great big monopoly, how on earth can you take on a great big monopoly? Well, you can, because you come up with a new way of doing something which is totally new, because that's the only way you can beat that new firm. So that changes everything, and this is how things change. E.g., who would have thought the music industry has changed dramatically with Apple iTunes? Okay, there's been an increase in allocative efficiency there, which is cheaper to buy music, but the old record and disc players are moving out of fashion, etc. Okay, so the structure of markets can sometimes change. The number of firms in the industry can sometimes change. And I particularly think with new machines, 3D printing, where you can print off things on a very, very small scale, create things straight away. This is likely to revolutionise the way in which you manufacture goods in the future. So everybody will be able to sort of create their own little manufacturing plant if you go out and you buy a 3D printer. The container industry had a massive impact upon transport. This one wasn't patented, and all it is you transport everything in containers, and presumably then you can fit them on top of each other easily. They're easier to offload at the other end. It completely changed transport and would have been a huge saving in costs. The internet has meant that your sunk costs for starting up a new firm are much smaller. For instance, here, I'm now teaching here, this is a new firm. It's incredibly cheap because I don't need to have classrooms, a school or anything else. Therefore, my fixed costs are much lower than anybody else's. So the sunk costs of creating this new industry, all I need to do is to buy a video projector. That's what it's called. It's called a Panasonic Full HD, whatever it's called, a camera. And therefore my costs are much lower. And this is what's happened with the internet, and therefore it's allowed a lot of new firms to start up in business. And even with things like producing coffee, you can now have small producers can actually sell direct to the customer. And therefore it cuts out all of the middle people, and therefore you get smaller firms starting up. And that's partially also because of the internet. They can advertise themselves through YouTube. So the whole basis of advertising is now changing as well, because you can now go direct to the consumer. I'm just reading a book by someone I can't remember, but he's talking about the whole way in which marketing works. And actually a small firm can be so quick in terms of its marketing. You just get a camera, you take a film, it's authentic, you put it out there. This is what we do. For bigger companies, there's some meetings and meetings, see the chief executive, get a great big budget worked out, have they got enough money to do it? The whole process takes much longer. So the structure of markets is changing, and that's changing due to technological change, and it's having a big impact. It has also created some monopolies like Apple and iTunes and the Google search engine. However, that benefits the consumer because it's cheaper, or you can get hold of more information. So the big thing is, how does it change the barriers to entry within a firm? Now, obviously, in terms of the retail sector, the barriers to entry of starting a new business in the retail sector have gone right down. So therefore, new players can come in onto the market. Technological can't say the word. Technological change. Lesson 31 over. Thank you.